All right, good morning. I believe we're live. For those of you that joined us on our last video about 10 or 15 minutes ago, I apologize. There was a technical glitch with Microsoft connecting to my audio. If y'all would be so kind to tell me that you could hear me loudly and clearly, I would appreciate it in the live comment section here. All right, to get this video started, my name is Jay. I'm the owner of Section8Consulting.com. And today I'm going to be discussing the potential for 1.4 million people that could potentially become homeless. And I'm glad, thank you for letting me know y'all can hear me. I'm going to start checking that again because with updates on our computer, occasionally Microsoft will forget and default to the regular audio, which you guys can't hear. Now, today's goal is not to batter any political party. That's not my interest. Of course, because of the topic we're going to be discussing, it's going to make a lot of you guys that are highly suspicious and paranoid that I'm somehow a Republican or a Democrat. This channel is not about that. One day I'll make a video that may be more favorable to one party and then the next to the other. Every video I get accused of something, so I'm okay with that. I'm not going to go see a psychiatrist over it, okay? All right, so what I want to do is break down statistical information, okay? Because the news is a very bad instigator of information. They like to publish things, they get everybody uptight, and they make it very scary. So we're going to look at homelessness, funding, the reality of funding per person, per state, and how this will play out through the administration that's presently in the White House, as well as the House and Congress, and look at this in a more logical pattern so you guys can better understand the outcome and potentials as we arrive in 2026 pretty soon. So, base information, there are roughly 770,000 homeless people across the U.S. And of that, we're looking at an increase of roughly triple that number. So we'll go from 770,000 to roughly 2.1 million people. That's roughly half of all voucher holders in America. And here's the key part, if they put term limits. Now, we're already the understanding that we have a high potential, if Congress approves next year, to move on to the federal system allowing block grants. And these block grants mean that they will send money to each and every state to address their own housing issues, okay? This will no longer be a circumstance where housing authorities administrate vouchers if approved. Now, the farther reach of this is whether or not there will be term limits for vouchers. What I mean by that is about all people that either currently have a voucher or want a voucher, if this were to be approved for the following year, this would mean that in addition to states handling housing and to determine what they want to do with their own money, rather than HUD and a local housing authority, it means any person that is not a senior, disabled, would likely their voucher would be turned into a 2-year voucher if you meet the work requirements and the time limit, which is you may have a voucher up to 2 years if you meet their work requirements. If you're not 62 years and older and not disabled. Now, this administration does not discuss at length veterans, but I believe they are part of the plan. However, I do not see any. He's been tight-lipped about that. So is Congress, the House, and even HUD, its leaders. I have fished and fished. I can assure you, veterans, you're not going to be left out on this deal. But I do not believe you're going to be the primary portion of this. In other words, if we do move to block grants and housing authorities are no longer going to process applications, and each state is going to accept the federal funds, and then begin putting you through a state voucher system, that likely those that are 62 years and older are safe, whether you have a voucher or not. Those that are disabled are safe, whether you have a voucher or not. And then overwhelmingly, I believe that most veterans honorably discharged will be safe in this, okay? Though we don't have a lot of information about that yet. Now, moving back to our bigger numbers, the news is publishing 1.4 million people. Well, that's if one, if we take 770,000 people that are already on the streets and needing, we had another 1.4, we landed around 2.1 million people that would be on a term limit potentially, okay? So 2.1 million, and then we're looking at, if we had continuum of care funding for vouchers at roughly, I think it would be 500 million, 1.5 billion, would put us at a number of around $230 per person to house. So it's an impossibility. At present, there is no continuum of care funding. There's no planned funding for the future. But let's talk about now what the potentials are if all this were to really play out and what it really means. Because instead of just taking the news at face value, which they do love to publish big numbers and yeah, the country's going to be homeless and this and that. Number one, if Congress would approve this, it would be late 2026. Okay. And beyond that, in 2026, it would still give most of you that already have a voucher, even if you had a term limit, it would put this at roughly the end of this administration, which means that if by chance either party decides to retract this under the new president, then this will really have never been a great problem for anybody. If all scenarios were to play out badly and we move to a state voucher system, put 2-year term limits for anybody that's not a senior, disabled, or potentially a veteran, then it would likely, we would see a fallout roughly 2.5 to 3 years from now. It would be, in my opinion, a slow tidal wave. Why? Because most people are probably, if that's set in place, a lot of people aren't going to want to waste their time with it, or the level of difficulty may be extremely high. So that would put us in a position where a lot of people just wouldn't bother, okay? Also, there's, again, state block funding, but at half the funding. So 2.1 million people divided by the funding, and then looking at the reality of who may or may not even bother to fool with the program, I would estimate that the numbers would realistically come out around maybe 300,000 to 400,000 people. That's still an incredible number. Now, to give you some statistical data on homelessness per state, New York runs the highest, okay? Second to that would be Hawaii. They've had increases of 100%, 150% since 2007 to current increases in homelessness. But the prize winner is going to be the following states. California coming in 189,000. Of that 189,000, if that number is correct, roughly 72,000 of them just the Los Angeles area. So it has the highest concentration on planet Earth. It would be ill-advised for most of you to continue to live there if you're low income, okay? I've been warning people about that already. Second to that would be New York. It has extremely high numbers. Third to that would be Massachusetts. But we must also keep another thing in mind. We're talking about some of the highest population centers in the U.S. Of course, the numbers are going to be big. They're going to be staggering. In this case, we're looking at also Texas and Florida. Though Florida is showing a 30% reduction. Now, I know many of you guys that are Republicans scream, oh, well, this is why Republicans do it better in Florida or even in Texas. But, this comes down to political reporting as well. We don't know that Florida's reporting accurate numbers. And to be honest with you, if you look at Miami as the sole example of homelessness, 1/4. Now, here's an interesting number. When the Miami Housing Authority they opened, they had, I think, 5,000 vouchers. Do you know roughly 25% of the population of the greater Miami area applied? 25% of the population. That number is very extraordinary. It's comparable to LA. Look, it is not a Democrat or Republican issue. It is a high population center, regardless if you're in Houston, Fort Worth, Dallas, or LA. And one of the reasons California statistically probably has a high homeless population is because many of our military bases are there. Many of the families are there. An insane market for rents is forced people. And the same thing that people have laughed about in Florida. Oh, well, look at California. They're doing such a terrible job. Well, look, Florida is quickly becoming unaffordable. Many of the seniors and low income there will be driven out. So for the things that Florida said about California, Florida is now pretty much on the hit list for going the same direction. It's hard to control this because of high population centers, and the responsibility lies in a lack of affordable housing. It's Florida's driven by a market of people that want to be near the beach and comfortable temperatures. Decades and decades of seniors moving there, and then of course the real driver behind most everything behind driver markets is going to be the housing market and the people that have and the people that have not. Those that have invest in it and they drive up that market, pushing out everybody else. Okay. We're seeing that right now in Texas. People no longer see California and Florida as a great option to on the long term for low income. So my home state, look, you know what? 6, 7 years ago, you could have bought a 4 bedroom house, okay, barely 3 or 4 years old, and you could have rented it for 1,200, okay, with a yard. You could have bought 10 years ago there, probably paid 89 to 90,000 for that home. That same home in California or in the LA area would probably run you about $5 million. Double that in San Francisco. So cause and effect is it's none of this is because I want to make sure everybody understands. Homeless people didn't create this problem. The wealthy did. Investment. But you can't hate, America's about one thing, capitalism. Capitalism works great for those that have. It works very badly for those that don't. Can you hate a person for investing? Well, your financial decisions make your life, but God didn't create every baby with a high IQ. God didn't decide to make everybody able-bodied either. We're all designed differently from day one. Some are born with great amplitude, and some are not. Some are born with legs, some are not. And so we have to be careful how much we judge on those that have not. Not everybody's been given the same hand. The biggest lie mommy ever told their children, mothers ever told their children, was you can be anything you want. No, you can. You can be to the limit of what your genetics allow you to. You can't tell your child that if he's got no legs or asthma or mental health problems. Okay. So as a country, we can either support all Americans or no Americans, because the virtue of being an American would be to consider all. That would be the moral and ethical thing. So now that I've given my vacation Bible lesson, and I'm not much of a Christian, but let's go back to the realities of funding. I would imagine that we have a great opportunity where this will roll down to the state, and the states will get the block grants. You won't be dealing with housing authorities anymore. You'll be getting and switching your vouchers over to a state system. It'll probably be better managed. Most states have the infrastructure in place, and they have state vouchers in most places. They've been able to manage it pretty good at a small level. We have to give them an opportunity. The state doesn't have an interest in earning profit off of this like a housing authority does. So I think the administration of this could go well. What will be at question and what will be argued very, very big during special election, because all this comes down to whether or not Democrats or Republicans take the House. If the Republicans remain in control, then they may choose to vote in term limits. But I don't think that even Republicans probably want to vote in one issue to put term limits when, in fact, it would create a much bigger issue across the country. We cannot support a triple hit to homelessness. We cannot increase the numbers from 770,000 to 2 million. Okay. Nor is it even advisable to be able to try to fund that. So I think that there needs to be some negotiation between both parties. We cannot artificially create this. Look, women with children, domestic violence victims and women and so on with children cannot simply just be thrown at the program. But you can also argue that this program was never designed to be forever. It's a hard decision for both parties to determine. So while I do believe there's a high percentage mark that the federal government will no longer be issuing vouchers and will just give funding to the states to determine how they give out vouchers, I do believe that likely will pass and go. What I believe will be argued hard is whether or not we can reasonably put a 2-year term limit on anybody that's not a veteran, senior, or a disabled person. Maybe give an opportunity to move it up to 5 years or 4 years, something a little bit more reasonable. Look, if you've ever experienced homelessness, nobody's going to come from off the street or out of a shelter and simply be able to put their life back in 2 years. I would know that because between the ages of 16 going forward 10 years, I was homeless. And, I fixed that problem by virtue of getting out. But I mean, 10 years. Nobody is 2-year term limits is not going to be well served because you're going to make it an impossibility. People ain't got clothes, ain't got a shower, and a stable place to go. And let me tell you something. We do not have the infrastructure in place across the country to support 2 million people on the streets. I mean, that would raise the numbers to 200,000 in LA. It would drown every shelter. And the problem with that is if the administration also decides to continue to not fund any part of homelessness as they just determined this year for 2026, then it means that not only do you get pushed out and lose your voucher, but you have nowhere to turn. It would be left to the local church or anybody that wanted to pick up that issue. Well, none of them could handle it to start with. And we're going to triple those numbers. And that's presuming all parties went homeless. But that'd be what the news would tell you. I would expect the worst fallout wouldn't be 2 million people, okay? Not even 1 million. I would expect that most people would find something that would be able to push them into getting housing. So I would expect the number to be much lower, somewhere around 200 to 500,000. But that's a very substantial number, considering that still almost doubles the number of homeless rather than triple, okay? I'm saying there's a high potential for doubling it. The news is trying to press that you triple it, but that's the news. It loves anything that creates despair. So like every time there's a natural disaster, they always use the word death toll. Everything's a fucking death toll. So the reason for the video clip that I put up, or the thumbnail for the video for viewer advisory, is because I tend to be very passionate about things. And at any point in the video, I could use profanities and other things because this is a sensitive topic. We're talking about taking and throwing people on the street for no other reason than a vote from people that have never known a day of homeless in their life. We're letting the haves determine the fate of the have-nots. And I got to tell you, that doesn't appear to be the American dream, It's my hope that the Republicans and Democrats carefully consider this, because I don't give a damn if you're in Congress or the House. Nearly every family in America, including those men and women that run in those political offices, knows either have somebody in their family that's facing it or have to deal with it. And there'll be plenty of fallout. We have got to start thinking about treating humans like humans. People are not credit scores. People are not cats and dogs. They're not designed to live outside. This would up crime, all kinds of problems. And so it's a serious issue as a nation, and we all need to think carefully. Are we using our best judgment, our best morals here, our best ethics? Are we just thinking about ourselves? Now, many would argue, hey, I'm a taxpayer. Well, most homeless people were at one time. The goal should be getting them back to the tax base, not banishing them. People cannot live in a magic fucking forest. We've already, as a country, started banning people from even laying down on the sidewalk. It's bad enough you're homeless, but no, we'll criminalize it if you lay on the sidewalk. Oh, you want to move into the forest or public lands? We'll give you a felony for that. How is the prison system for homeless supporting anything? We're moving a debt. We're moving a cost nobody wants to pay. So everybody's arguing, I'm a taxpayer, I want to pay for these homeless people. What do you think they're going to do in prison? In jail? That costs money too. And so these are humans we're talking about. Nobody says anybody's going to like everybody. But I mean, we have to think carefully as a country. And also, we are a platform for the entire globe. If we show we don't even give a shit about the people who live in our country, whether they're old and young, and we're willing to put women and children on the sidewalk and put a term limit and tell, hey, good luck, tough shit. And by the way, Once your limit's over, good luck. We'll just fly you down to Puerto Rico and drop you off on the beach. We got to stop the bullshit with this, seriously. You know, in my career, in my office, Section 8 Consulting.com, I've had to face, out of 22,000 plus clients, roughly half were facing homelessness. And I've watched people that are in charge at shelters and nonprofits ambiguously sit there and judge those people. Now, we're not talking about somebody walking down the freeway with one flip-flop and a crack pipe in their purse. We're talking about people that a unnatural number of things happen in events, a row of events they couldn't control happen, and they lost everything. We're old. Look, it only takes a minute for an eviction to be served, another minute to be on the sidewalk and all your shit stolen, and then you've got nothing, right? But that 1 minute it took for you to arrive in your sidewalk where nobody gave a damn, it can take years to recover from that. And that's my argument about 2-year term limits. We need to look a little closely based on facts and reality. The real homeless people out there that don't want to be at a shelter, they prefer to drink and do drugs on their own tent. That's their business. But that's not most of homeless people. That is not the representation of most people that are low income. Some people had to take care of children. There's so many circumstances behind this stuff that nobody's considering, but where it's easy to judge when your air is running at 30 degrees, you got champagne and you Lincoln Navigator, it's real fucking easy to judge everybody from the comfort of your home with your Netflix and everything else. We spend so much time in judgment and then we put people in charge, millionaires and billionaires, in charge of everything. Now, these people have never known a day's pain in their life, but yet they're making decisions based on things they've never even seen or experienced. It seems to me it'd be better for us to experience a president that's known a little bit of trouble, or at least get some people in Congress that understand both sides, not just a fucking plane ride to the homeless shelter and a cute little visit, to actually experience it. So we understand how to make good decisions based on reality, not a bunch of paperwork from Harvard or Yale. When you take your last breath, I'm going to advise most of you, whether you're a God-fearing person or not, when you take your last breath, you're going to have two options. You can either regret the life that you lived or not. You can regret those decisions of judgment or not. Now, I understand every home and every family has to defend itself, but it shouldn't be at the moral cost of treating people like they're disposable trash. And the news has completely lost their fucking mind. Though I don't agree with everything being fake, the vast majority is just exploitation. We're no longer reporting from 5 or 6 angles. News is strictly political now. It's based on people that have a lot of money and the agenda they want to press across the news. It's been going on for years, both on the Republican and Democratic parties. Anybody ever heard the truth? But there's also the whole truth. The news only reports part of the truth, but never the whole truth. And people and families and people are using this truth, but not the whole truth, as a basis for making decisions and judgment. As a nation, we've got to look at this and figure out what can be done for those that want to recover from a temporary episode of homelessness, and what can be done. What can we do with single moms that are working their ass off, 3 different jobs, that need help, that have disabled children? A lot of you, oh yeah, well, she should have been awake in 3rd grade. She should have, look, she's got a GED. She ain't worth a shit. But nobody's thinking about the fact that she's got children that are disabled. It's kind of hard to go to night school to be a nurse if your child's in a wheelchair breathing through a tube. People don't think about everything. They just run their mouth, and it's a big, big problem. Like I said, it's easy to run your lips behind your computer to privacy your home when you never experienced it. So we need to think very carefully how much we actually care. Do you care about how much you want to run your mouth and judge people, or do you want to try to do something? So what I'm trying to do is appeal to everybody's vanity in the circumstance. This country cannot survive having a triple hit on homelessness. You know, we've got to do a better job, because you look, 2 million people not paying in the tax system is not a good thing. Just like having all these big corporations that have $1 trillion sitting in their bank account because we haven't figured out how to make them pay taxes. I mean, when do I have a national debt? When Google, YouTube, and the rest of these companies sit here and they're sitting on $500 billion of profit, and they're just sending it off to Greenland and everywhere else where they ain't going to pay anything. We need to shut that shit down. Google, Facebook, and the rest of them, they need to start paying. Middle America as a country middle America in its spending cannot support the national debt. And then we don't do anything to make the companies pay. There's only so many Americans paying tax. But if we're not going to tax the companies to make the most money, then we have a problem. Okay, I hate to bring that up, but it really it's like a nail in my ass over that. All right, so I'm going to start from the most current comments, and I'm going to roll back a little bit. And the reason I'm going to do that is because people may have commented earlier and they may not be with us anymore. So if you have questions, you'd like to harass me, you'd like to thank me, you'd like to critique me, you'd like to judge me, please do so. I'm okay with that. I've lived long enough, half a century, I'm good. I won't cry later, trust me. And if you offend me enough, I'll just put your ass out my channel. I'm not worried about it. It's another day. My cats get offended sometimes, and I invite them to go outside and think about that for a bit. I'll put you in timeout if your comments are too bad. I'm just teasing with you guys. All right, Layla. Opportunity for growth and independence. Absolutely. CC goes on to say full-time minimum wage is not enough. True. Well, we can't, as a nation, continue. Like in Texas, we have a minimum wage of $8. So who the fuck is going to live on that? I mean, my cat couldn't live on that. You know, I spent $75 like every third or fourth day just buying a box of treats for 6 cats. Jasmine Johnson, the psychic, maybe it should be a prerequisite for campaigning for office. I wouldn't make a good politician. I would be just like Mr. Donald Trump, except I would be extreme in my own way, probably say things to piss off half America. And, is opportunity that there has to be somebody that's more diplomatic than me running for office. That's for sure. Vote in somebody that can talk proper. So, all right. So Paper Roses, there's a program to buy housing. Yes, it's called the HUD Home Ownership Program, and you probably got about a half a year before they defund that. I don't know if y'all can hear this, but Grandma Gracie, my 25-year-old cat, she's howling in the background. I don't think my mic is picking that up. I unfortunately made this video during the time I normally brush her. She's a very, very old cat. She'd be about 200 human years. And she is going to town. So I don't know if y'all can hear her in the background. All right. So, Bill D, I appreciate your honesty and passion. Well, thank you, Bill. Mark H, there is a difference between safety net and hammock. So when you make comments like that, it allows me to see whether or not you're here to judge or we're here to have a grown-up conversation. Comments that are going to levy judgment based on no material fact will not be answered in this channel, okay? If you can't bring something scientific or intelligible to this channel, then get out. Margie Harris, wow. Nikki B says, right? Princess Samuel says short term, not worth it. Maybe, maybe not. Ian Dougherty, yes, but full-time federal minimum wage gets you still benefits. You know, another option this country could consider is instead of taxing people the way that we do, maybe just set a national standard for 30% of everybody's income and every company's income, and then have health care and housing and so on. But that would no longer make us America, would it? We might be a socialist country if we did that. I think every answer we could throw out this would have a benefit or a negative. It's really a tough one. And it's good to speculate, talk, and even view the different ideas out there. I don't have the answer either. You know, I don't have an answer as a company because my job is literally to house people. I worry less about solutions, more about getting people housing for any means legally possible. Trust me, I know that pandemic. I almost had a stroke working crazy hours trying to keep people from living in their cars. So, all right, Ian Dougherty, yes, but full time. Okay. So Debbie Spangler, I like that name. Thank you for everything you do. Sending love. Appreciate the love. I appreciate anybody that appreciates. And again, it's okay to love me one video and hate me the next. It's okay to accuse me of being a Democrat one day and a Republican the next. I promise you, I won't cry at night. Princess, great question. So I think, we all need to be allowed a platform to share our thoughts and ideas. But I mean, sharing thoughts and ideas shouldn't turn this channel into a circumstance where we're just simply going to pass our judgment. Let me tell you something, if you think you're the smartest fucking person in the room where you can hop into this channel or any other and levy judgment against anything, then you're sorely mistaken. You're part of the problem. Sharing ideas, whether they're fruitful or not, is okay. That's what we need to turn the dialogue to. Not everybody needs to be one side of the fence or the other. Sometimes we need to stop and think about solutions. So getting back again to the primary topic of homelessness, we face some very difficult challenges this administration, in terms of housing and vouchers, 2-year time limits, work requirements, women and children facing a high potential of homelessness, defunding, half funding, the ending of HUD home ownership potentially, the end of homeless funding and continuum of care funding, the dissolution and of most housing authorities. Housing authorities haven't seen much money lately. By the end of the year, many of them become insolvent. There's no money. Next year, then they'll start selling off their portfolio, letting go of the staff. Though they didn't serve much of a great purpose in some places in America, but they do serve a purpose. They, clearly they accept federal funds and they help people be able to use a voucher if they qualify. But sometimes it can be a rather mean-spirited process, rather brutal for most. So I'm going to wrap this up because I didn't really want this to be a speech. We have 770,000 homeless in the nation. With the addition of term limits, it would possibly drive that number up to 2.1 million people, if all worst case scenario. I think that we should lobby Congress and the House to consider a different term for that, or no term at all, and maybe put in a different requirement. Put a limit, but not such a severe one to start. Let's see, because that's asserting that all Americans would react the same way. A better view of this would be, let's see who will take an opportunity and get off the street and stay and remain housed and pay taxes, and let's see who will not and who will be in the middle. I think there needs to be a multi-pronged approach to address the different types of people. Some that will take advantage of an opportunity to do better, while others will take a moderate opportunity, and then some will just simply attempt to defraud the system. And so we cannot treat all people in one resolution and one solution as a solution for everybody, because humans aren't like that, are they? Hell, I'm lucky if I get along with my neighbors half the time, some of them, and the other half I do. And so we need to think about multiple solutions deployed properly with checks and balances. Are we earning our way? Being an American is not a free ride. Okay? It is not a free ride. You can be born here or not. If you're not going to put in, if you're not going to kick in, this is going to go badly for you. If you're not going to do your best and you're not going to take your responsibilities as an American and how you represent this country, then you're not going to do well. So I feel like I'm giving a lecture to kindergarten. And I know you guys aren't kindergartners, but we need to consider all options. All right, moving on from there. Princess says, great question. Is he correct? Becky Savage, thanks. One thing I'm going to move back to is the funding. If they do, we're talking about 2-year term limits, but if they do go back and we look at funding, 2.1 million people would we'd only have a budget of $238 per person. You're not going to be able to house anybody with that. So if we divide that number again, it's down to 600. We've got to create a reduction of that million poor down to around 200,000 for people to even get a voucher. So nobody's even thought about the math here. So I'm going to remain in my position with this as I'm going to continue to track the policies of the House, Congress, and the executive level. I'm going to continue to cooperate with all 50 states to be able to get their policies, procedures. If there are loopholes, we shall exploit them within the legal bounds, the federal law and state law. I'm currently, our company is compiling a list of all 50 states. So if there's a transition from federal vouchers to state, then most of you will have the critical information you need as it comes. I, myself, this company and its channel was only the second person at the time to even make any American aware of what was happening. And though I earned no accolade from that, I'm just telling you, I watch carefully. I've serviced enough people to fit into a small county at 22,000 people. So nobody can suggest that I don't understand the heartbeat of the market. And servicing them from all 50 states, that means I would have had to have a fine understanding of both policy, procedure, administrative manuals, COC, continuum of care, HIMS, and every other system that goes in place with this across all 50 states. Though I don't have an incredible IQ, I do have an incredible attention span for trying to help people get into housing, because the bigger issue of a lot of housing is a lot of people simply are unable to defeat the tough part of getting into the system, and that's understanding it, how to navigate it. In other words, there's lots of people that are well qualified to be able to receive assistance, whether short-term or long-term, but they simply don't grasp how to be able to successfully qualify. That's something that my company has become ultra niche focused on, is how to make the system work for real people and not scaring them off. And also servicing those with mental health issues, because sometimes mental health can affect the way the public and people perceive you. And so I put a heavy emphasis in our company to help those people. Though I have to admit, I have a limit sometimes, and some people can be a nuisance even when you're highly trained to not be annoyed. I got a few former clients that just about gave me a nervous breakdown, but that's life, isn't it? If you can't do the job without moaning, then don't do the job. All right, let's go back to these comments. All right, so Inter 67 says homeless exists in millions. The official estimates given by local, state, and federal government only count to those in streets and shelters. Well, that depends on the source. You're presuming you know where I got the source. I got the source from the U.S. government, okay? Not a publication on Google. CC, AI is expected to take away jobs. Well, there's plus and negatives AI, artificial intelligence. It'll solve many problems, and it'll create many problems, just like computers did. This is nothing new. There's always been a balance in the world. There's yin and yang, male and female, night and day, yin and yang, There's never a flawless solution. That's why I've been talking at length just about homeless crisis, high potential to deal with people at all levels. Patricia, if you check the HUD OIG website, as if I'd never checked that in 25 years. I just woke up today like a lollipop and thought, gee, why don't I check OIG? I've read everything on that site. I'm probably smarter than half the people that run it. If you check the HUD OIG website, you'll see hundreds of pages of former employees that stole HUD funds. That's not even possible. I'm not going to get into that because I'm going to say something that's going to offend people again. Look, guys, you don't become an expert in the field of work that I'm in unless you really know your shit. And I don't need to check OIG. I'm not trying to be offensive, but honestly, that'd be like going down and telling the president he's an idiot. It wouldn't matter. He's still the president. He got there and elected, right? Well, same thing with my job. You certainly can feel what you want, but I do my job, not somebody else. All right, moving on from there. Stephanie says, I had a voucher and lived in 3 places for 3 years. This year, when they did my recertification for my voucher, I went month to month and over 50% of my income. Well, Stephanie, I'd say reach out to my company because it sounds like you've got a serious problem there. I can't talk about things related to finance, money in your case in a live chat. There's lots of problems with that, especially public problems. So, TN, this administration is going to cause squatting to skyrocket. Well, that's a colorful way to put it, but lots of things cause homelessness to skyrocket. I could send a tornado through Baton Rouge and make homelessness skyrocket. So, look, the numbers have always averaged about the same, with about a 30, 20, anywhere from a 1% to 30% increase. The only extreme examples are New York, California, Massachusetts, and Florida, and a little bit of Texas. Psalm 91. Well, somebody's hitting hearts big time. I'm disabled. I live in a unit through the Community Housing Association in Baltimore, funded by CLC. Will this program go away? I haven't rubbed my crystal ball today, and I certainly have not read the tea leaves in my coffee yet, but I'm hoping so, because nobody wants to watch a prostitute walk with one flip-flop down the freeway. So we have to be careful, okay? Look, guys, I've enjoyed with you guys, joking with you a bit today and talking about this, but I think the only real potential solution here is if we do face a high number of homelessness and we double or triple this, there isn't a solution that's been invented to solve that problem. That includes my homeless. I think that will raise alarm across the nation, and I think as a nation, we'll have to address it at that time. There's no simple answers to this, okay? Do I believe personally, on the basis of my career, spanning what it has, and working with clients across all 50 states, personally, I find it highly improbable that even the worst changes can produce that many homeless people, even for a short period of time. Realistically, I think the news reports 1.4. I would estimate somewhere around 300,000 to 400,000, and that's pretty exceptional. That's going to create a big problem, but it's not unsolvable. Okay. So the moral of the story is, guys, we need to think in calculated numbers. And I want to do credit one person here. You know, numbers are numbers that are reported. And reports can be determined a lot of ways. There's reports from every state, can come from either a political party. They can show numbers that are inflated or even deflated. We can only base today's video and today's conversation on the best information that we think that we have, and then see what happens. But what I'm trying to tell you is the peril of the news and news agencies will take that number and triple it, okay? So I think you see the moral of the story here. Well, guys, I've enjoyed really talking with you guys. I think that our next video is going to address, well, we're going to be talking about a scandal. Again, we're going to talk about another housing authority that has, well, let's put it to you this way. When I get through with that video in another day or two and we discuss it, I'm going to fry everybody at that housing authority. The shit they pulled off of that housing authority, it's beyond anything you guys have imagined. I made lots of videos about housing authorities committing fraud, being insolvent, stealing money, unacceptable behavior, professional misconduct, violation of both state and federal law. But our newest contender is decided it's going to take the first place. And so if you'd like to join me, I believe today's Sunday, Tuesday, we're going to be discussing that housing authority. If you'd like to hear a little bit more regarding the topic of that housing authority and the scandal rolling through it, I'll put it this way. It's so serious that the feds, the FBI has got involved. Okay? For those of you that have been treated badly by housing authorities, you'll get a little bit of justice watching this video. At least you'll feel good when you leave here, especially after I use some of my more colorful Louisiana profanities to describe just what I think of people that would victimize people that are already victims and call yourself a housing authority. And I am very pleased with the FBI's efforts. It's my hope that housing authority and its employees will receive what we call in my industry Section 9, not Section 8, but Section 9. For those that don't know, Section 9 is when we give you 3 hots and a cot in a federal prison. We give you a lease that'll run 75%. The only difference is you get great medical, you get a little bit of food, three squares a day, but the lease is horrible, and you get no key to your door. So we're going to discuss Section 9 and the Housing Authority employees that will likely be chained up, thrown on a bus, and thrown to a federal prison to serve out their Section 9 term. Look, anytime the federal government houses you, that's Section 9. For those of you that want to commit crimes and be a monster and want to serve at the pleasure of the state and issue vouchers ethically and morally and treat people well, then kudos to you. If you don't, then you'll receive the gift of the U.S. government for a Section 9 voucher. 3 hots and a cot in a federal prison for $25. And you'll serve 75%, and you'll never get a key. You can lodge your complaints with the guard right after he beats your ass. All right. I've enjoyed talking. We'll see you again.